Football Playbook with your boy, RIC, and the place to be, Ric Serritella, here on this 95th edition here. Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. It's Hump Day, here to get you a day closer to the Turnpike Trilogy. Eagles, Giants, Part 3. It's all going down. The road to Glendale runs through the NFC East. We're going to talk about it for the next 2 hours of power. Glad to see you're buckled up, strapped up, ready to go, hunkered down, buckle up. Man, we got a jam-packed show for you today. The usual Wednesday suspects, Glenn Irby, Eagles Newswire, USA Today, along with Kayla Santiago, Delmarva Sports, will join us throughout the show. We've also got 25 days into the Super Bowl, 99 days into the NFL Draft. But here, to get it jump-started, kick us off 81 hours away from the Turnpike Trilogy, Delaware Journal News, my favorite Martin Frank, joining us here on the Football Playbook. Good morning, Martin. I appreciate the time. I know it's a playoff week, so you're very busy, crazy schedule, hecticness all the way around, but I can't wait to pick your brain for this Turnpike Trilogy classic that's going to happen this Saturday night at the Link, 8:15 p.m. I know the beat writers just love them some primetime games, but hey, you know, where are we feeling? I guess a big sigh of relief yesterday. I guess from the Eagles fans, it sounds like a lot of confidence from the Jalen Hurts presser. He wasn't on the injury report. We're feeling pretty good this morning, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's going to play. I mean, the question has always been, you know, how well he's going to play, like what he's going to be able to do. And I'm going to guess like the whole playbook's going to be open to him. I mean, the only chance the Eagles really have is if he's the Jalen Hurts before the injury, as opposed to the Jalen Hurts who played the last time against the Giants, you know, on 10 days ago. So they need that Jalen Hurts, and all indications are that he's going to be, you know, running, doing everything that he's been doing before. So that's a good sign for Eagles fans for sure.
I agree wholeheartedly. And last week, I didn't know if the whole playbook would be open. I didn't know where Jalen Hurts would be with the pain tolerance, because week 18, we did see adjustments. I don't know if that was by design, if it was due to the Jalen Hurts implications, but we did see fewer designed runs. We've had some guests, and myself included, thought maybe some of the ball velocity was off on the deep ball throws, but the fact that he did get in there, kicked off some of that rust, you've got to imagine he's feeling better now. Do you think the designed runs will be like what we saw in week 18, more like we saw in the beginning of the season pre-injury, or kind of an ebb and flow of the game to be determined?
I think it has to be like what it was before the injury. I mean, you know, that's like Jalen Hurts' superpower, and that makes everybody else more effective, because if the Giants have to devote someone to try and stop him, well then, you know, AJ Brown doesn't have double coverage every time he goes out. You know, Miles Sanders doesn't have a Giants linebacker spying him, because maybe he's worried about Jalen Hurts keeping the ball on the read option. So yeah, I think you got to pretty much open up the playbook to what it was before the injury. And you know, we saw the first game against the Giants on December 11th, which was a week before the injury. You know, Hurts and the offense were pretty much unstoppable. They put up 48 points against the Giants. You know, they didn't know, you know, every time they tried to like focus in on Hurts and Miles Sanders, he threw deep to Devontae Smith or AJ Brown. And every time they tried to take those guys away, you know, they just ran like crazy, and the Giants had no answers. So yeah, that's what the Eagles need. I mean, if Hurts is 100% or close to it, the Eagles shouldn't really have much of a problem with the Giants.
Yeah, and to your point, I agree. The Eagles need to get on the board early, suck that momentum out of the windpipes of the New York Giants, right? Because they went into Minnesota and they sucked the wind out of that crowd. And you don't want to have a situation where the Giants get on the board and all of a sudden that bottle of belief is open again. You want to crush their soul, crush their spirit. And I saw you did a great article on the bounty, quote unquote, that Jalen Hurts mentioned in his press conference. And they asked him, you know, how's your pain tolerance from the last game to this game? Has it improved? He said, I can't call it. But I noticed he's been consistently saying that this is not the first time he's played with an injury. This is not the first time he's been injured. He said it's just magnified. And obviously the playoffs, there's an ultra microscope that he's underneath. But has he Do you know, has he really been this seriously injured and played through such pain? Do you know, Martin?
Well, not this year, but I mean, last year he sprained his ankle. I think it was against the Giants like late November up at the Meadowlands, and he missed the one game, and then they had a bye. Like Gardner Minshew replaced him, played really well. They beat the Jets, and then they had a bye, and then he came back, but he wasn't the same. I mean, the ankle bothered him. Even like I remember the playoff game against the Buccaneers, he came into his post-game press conference wearing a walking boot, which we had never seen. So that was kind of a red flag. It kind of like up until then, like, it was just he was going to play and he was going to do what he was, always doing. And, you never really realized how much in pain or how bad it was until, that post-game press conference against the Bucks when he shows up in a walking boot. And then, I think it was like a month later he had surgery on it. So yeah, I mean, I assume that he played through a lot of pain then. And I assume he's going to play through pain this time. I don't think his shoulder is totally healed. I mean, we didn't really see, like last week they had 2 practice days. The first day he didn't throw at all. And the second day he did throw, but we only saw like maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So you can't really get a gauge on how well he was throwing or moving around or anything like that. But, today's practice is going to be huge because it's like their most intense practice of the week and everything. So, if he's if he's not on the injury report like he was yesterday, and yesterday I should clarify was a walkthrough, so that was just kind of an estimate. So if today he's not on the injury report, well, that's obviously a pretty good sign that he's good to go and he'll be, he'll play as much and as effectively as he can with the shoulder. But I would assume that like sometime after the Eagles are done playing, we'll probably get a much better idea of how painful this whole process was for him.
Yeah,
And I would say the same thing with Lane Johnson.
Yeah, no doubt. What time is practice today, Martin? Do you know?
Today it is around 1:30, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Sports Take will be on when they hit the field. All right, so let me ask you this, and I want to get into that injury report because Avonte Maddox is the only guy I see here that did not practice. A couple guys showed up limited. Linville Joseph has a calf now, but let me ask you, before we get into that, one guy I'm not seeing here is Miles Sanders, and we've heard some talk that maybe his role was diminished down the stretch to kind of nurse that knee injury. I heard sound bites from Miles Sanders in front of his locker room saying, hey, it hasn't bothered me. I'm good to go. Sirianni in his pressers says it has been an issue. Now, ironic enough, the 5'5" giant killer in Boston Scott, I mean, this guy just 10 touchdowns in 8 career games, I think it is. So how do you see the backfield? Is it going to be a committee by approach? Are they going to get back to leaning on Miles Sanders? Will today's practice with Miles be a telling sign how much workload he gets on Saturday? How do you see that backfield unfolding?
Yeah, I mean, I think if Miles Sanders is good to go, he's going to be the main guy like he usually is. They like to sprinkle in Boston Scott, especially against the Giants, because for some reason or other, he kills them. And Kenny Gainwell's been getting more of a chance like these last few games too. So I would think he would be involved in the mix. But I would still think Miles Sanders will be the guy. I mean, the fact that he wasn't on the injury report yesterday, like you mentioned, is a great sign. I mean, I know the knee was kind of bothering him the last few weeks of the season and everything like that, but it's the playoffs. You gotta do whatever you can to get out there and play as well as you can and as effectively as possible. And Miles Sanders means a lot to the Eagles offense, so I think you'll see him like expected. I mean, unless something happens during the game, then you got to throw everything out the window. But I would think Miles Sanders would be all right to go.
Martin Frank, Delaware Journal News Online, here with us on the Football Playbook. We'll get into the injuries. One more on the offensive side. Dallas Goedert, he came off the IR. He was back in the fold with Gardner Minshew. Week 18 was a different looking offense. Never really got back into the fold since he's come off that injury, Martin. I see the Giants here struggle mightily against tight ends. Recent game against TJ Hawkinson, he shredded him. And I remember 2 weeks ago, too, Sirianni said, and he was asked about Goddard. He said, you know what? we can't wait to get back to the pre-injury Dallas guy. And he said it's coming. He sounded pretty confident of that.
Yeah.
Is this the week it's coming?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. They've kind of like eased him back in. I was kind of surprised, like he hasn't been as much of a focus of the offense as he was before the injury. But for a lot of these guys, having this week off was like everything for them. I mean, if the Eagles had to play a playoff game last week, Lane Johnson already said that he probably wouldn't have been able to play. Goddard would still be hurting. Miles Sanders would still be hurting. Avonte Maddox, no chance. He's probably not playing this week either. But, and even Jalen Hurts, I mean, if he had to play a week after the game against the Giants, I mean, he's probably not, the Jalen Hurts that we're accustomed to seeing. So, like, that having that bye week was huge for all these guys. I mean, Dallas Goedert now, I think, is what, like, maybe 2 months past or a month and a half past his injury and stuff. And I know the shoulder injury, he didn't have surgery on it. He needed time for it to heal. And he probably came back a little bit sooner than he should have. I think he did. He came back against the Giants the first game. Oh no, it was the week after. No, it was the Cowboys game. Never mind. But so he's only been back for like three games. This will be his fourth game. He's had an extra week to rest, and for a lot of these guys, I mean that week off makes a huge difference, and I think you're going to see that on Saturday night against the Giants. I mean, they'll probably be as healthy as they've been in, I don't know, probably the last month or so, easily.
Yeah, and the Lane Johnson is a big one, and that's the benefit of the bye week. So I did not hear Lane say that, so that's interesting. He said last week he would not have been able to go. It sounds like 99.9% he is going to go. What's your confidence level, though, Martin, that he lasts this whole playoff run?
Yeah, that's the huge question, because when we talked to him last week, I mean, he said what he said about probably not being able to play last week, and B, I mean, it's an injury that he needs surgery on. It's not something that's going to heal. I mean, he's going to have to play through probably an incredible amount of pain. I mean, more than you or I or anybody else could probably handle. So it's just a question, like, how long can he last? I mean, he first suffered the injury, or at least as far as we know about, in that first game against the Giants on December 11th. He made it through the next game against the Bears, but then it came up again, against the Cowboys, which was 2 weeks after. So, I mean, it could flare up again at any time, and maybe he, and if it does, he's probably going to have to come out, and maybe he tries to come back in, or maybe it's just so bad that he can't play. And, the Eagles obviously need a backup plan. And I think we've kind of seen that the last couple of weeks with Jack Driscoll playing right tackle. And I think we've also seen that Jack Driscoll, and nothing against Jack Driscoll, but he's not Lane Johnson. And actually nobody is. So they really need Lane Johnson in there as effective as possible, but there's no telling, if that's going to happen, or how long he's going to last. Because, like I said, it's an injury that he needs surgery on, and it's not going to heal. I mean, even though he had the last 2 games off plus the bye week, I mean, there's no telling, like, how much he can last during the game. So big question for sure.
To me, that's the biggest question mark, or the biggest impact, at least in regards to injuries. And not too far behind that on the defensive side is Avonte Maddox. This toe injury has just lingered and lingered and lingered. Doesn't sound like there's much of a chance he's going to go this week. Any shot, if the Eagles advance, that we might see him prior to the Super Bowl, or does he just need more time, more rest?
Yeah, I would be surprised if he's able to play before the Super Bowl if the Eagles get there. I mean, because again, after Saturday, they got to come back the next Sunday. And, Avonte hasn't, I think it's been like 3 or 4 weeks now. Like, he went out the same time Lane Johnson has. And because it's a toe, I mean, you can't do a whole lot to, like, keep your conditioning and everything. So, like, if he doesn't return to practice in some capacity either today or tomorrow, and has to wait until next week, I mean, I think it would be really hard for him to play in an NFC championship game. I mean, maybe get a few snaps here or there. But then, after that game, if they win, you got a bye week again. So, that should be maybe enough time. I mean, they didn't put him on IR, which indicates that they think he has a chance to come back. So, obviously a good sign. But I think if he's not back practicing in some capacity this week, then, he's probably not going to be back until the Super Bowl, assuming the Eagles get there and everything.
That's unfortunate. A big loss. We had Mike Tanier from Football Outsiders talking about how the Eagles against number 1 and number 2 wideouts were basically top 1 or top 2 defending the 1 and 2 wideouts. And in the slot, they fall all the way down to 22nd in the NFL in defending the slot wide receiver. So I'm not sure it's going to be a big issue against the Giants wideouts, but depending on who they face, if and when they advance, this could continue to be a storyline. Okay, Robert Quinn, is on. He was limited with the back. We know that's nothing new. However, week 18, he showed he had a little left in the gas tank there. It looks like we're going to see him sprinkled into this defensive line rotation with the sack pack there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I get the feeling that Josh Sweat will be back, so I mean that'll be big. But I think they'll also keep Robert Quinn on the game day roster, just to make sure if Sweat can't make it through the game or anything. And yeah, it adds depth to the defensive line, which I mean that's always been like the Eagles' bread and butter. Their defensive line getting after Daniel Jones. I mean they're gonna have to be careful with Daniel because he's shown that he can run the ball. I mean, kind of like Hurts. I mean, he had almost as many yards rushing this year as Hurts did. And, I think we saw against the Vikings, like, if there's nothing open, he'll pull the ball and run. Maybe not as fast as Jalen Hurts, but I mean, he can get the job done. And the Eagles have to keep an eye on that. I mean, it's not like just go after the quarterback and attack him in the pocket and stuff. You gotta also make sure that if he steps out of the pocket, you account for him as a defensive lineman and hold your contain and all that stuff. So yeah, it's they'll probably need Robert Quinn. They'll probably need as many of those guys as possible because they're gonna have to come after him like wave after wave and stuff like that. So Robert Quinn can help for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a 4th round pick. That's why you give it up. You try to catch lightning in the bottle. Now is the time. I agree. I'm assuming you saw the Giants game because that Giants offense looked like the Eagles offense from earlier this season, the first 13 games or so, where, but Barkley only had 9 touches on the ground. I know he caught another 5 out of the backfield, but it was Daniel Jones. And I've seen at times they've ran the wishbone. They've run Wildcat with Saquon Barkley. One week they had 8 offensive linemen they were using in formation. So what do you think? I mean, it's Dayball, he'll throw the kitchen sink at you. I'll do offense first. What do you think the Giants' offense is going to look like? Is it going to be more of this? And I'll say this. I was not a Daniel Jones believer. They gave him 22.3 million reasons to come into this season with a chip on his shoulder. He's responded very well. I can't believe it when I look at it. Only 5 interceptions, only 3 lost fumbles. This guy was a turnover machine, Martin. I mean, this guy was losing double-digit fumbles in single seasons. And he's really done a great job protecting the football, 72% completion percentage over the last 5 games of the regular season, and he's averaging 60 yards rushing per game during that stretch. I mean, this is a different looking Giants offense, at least, than the first half of their season. And they faced the Eagles both times in the second half, so we've seen, a version of it. But week 18, we saw Davis Webb, we saw Matt Breida. Right. We didn't really see the full throttle offense there.
Yeah, and you could even make the case they didn't see the full throttle offense the first game because I believe I know Barkley played, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't 100%. I think he was dealing with like maybe an ankle injury going into that week or something like that. And once the Eagles took a big lead, they kind of scaled back with using Barkley. So I would say the Eagles haven't seen the full Giants offense yet either. I mean, I like everybody else was watching the game against the Vikings, and a lot of it I think is because the Vikings defense was just terrible. But the Giants will definitely present some problems for them. On the one hand, the receivers aren't that great, so you would think that either Slay or Bradbury can kind of keep the wraps down on Darius Slayton. And, Hodgins has played well and stuff, but I think I saw he's kind of nursing an injury this week too. So I would think like both, Slay and Bradbury can kind of take care of the Giants wide receivers. So they could maybe devote an extra guy to like, clamping down on Jones and Barkley. But even still, it's not going to be easy. I mean, Daniel Jones kind of gives you that same +1 advantage that the Eagles have with Hurts and Miles Sanders. So yeah, the Eagles are going to have. I don't think the Eagles have really seen the full force of what the Giants offense can do. And like you mentioned, the second game, I mean, that was nothing. I mean, Davis Webb, the Eagles will never see him again. Breida, maybe Gary Brightwell might get a carry here or there, but it's going to be Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, and the Eagles have to stop them. And that's pretty much the key. If they can do that, they should have no trouble against the Giants, but it's a big if.
Yeah, I would hope Slay and Bradbury could shut down the lethal duo of Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James over there for Big Blue. Last one for you, just from the Giants' defensive perspective. I saw Wink Martindale kind of took a page out of the Jonathan Gannon playbook. He played quarters coverage. He did not blitz. I mean, he blitzed 50% of the time during the regular season, only 22% against the Vikings. Is this, something the Eagles have to think about this matchup? Because usually Wink Martindale likes to send that pass rush, but last week, not so much. Was that just an adaptation to the Vikings? Will we see something different against the Giants? This coaching staff for the G-men have been very, very well.
I would think they'd blitz Hurts like crazy just to try to hit him, and see how well his shoulder can stand up. I mean, I would think against the Vikings, they didn't blitz as much because of Justin Jefferson, and they wanted to make sure, that he wasn't like getting behind them. And they did a great job. I mean, I don't think he had more than like 5 or 6 catches, maybe like 50 something yards. He wasn't
one catch in the second half.
Yeah, he wasn't much of a factor at all. So, I think that was game plan specific for the Vikings. And I think for the Giants and Wink Martindale, I mean, he's going to go after Hurts with everything he has. I mean, just because, there's the shoulder question and everything. And if he's not, if they can get to Hurts early, and maybe I'm not saying they have a bounty on him or anything like that, but I mean, the Giants are going to try to hit Jalen Hurts. I mean, I don't think that's anything like earth-shattering to say. So, yeah, they'll test him and they'll come after him with everything they got. I would expect nothing less.
All right, Martin, we're going to get you out of here. Again, Delaware Journal News online. Make sure you go check them out. Tell the great listening audience what you have on deck, what the great content is going to be flowing this week. And also, I see here, last time I checked, it was a 7.5 point spread in favor of the Eagles. Do you see it closer? Do you see a blowout? What kind of outcome are you looking at Saturday night?
I think the spread is pretty much like right on the money. I mean, I think the Eagles will win. I think it'll be like, maybe like a 28-20 type of game. But I think it'll be interesting. It's definitely not going to be the blowout the first game was, and the second game you just pretty much throw out the window. And as far as my coverage this week, I actually have a story posting this tomorrow morning about how, the Eagles rookies like Jordan Davis, Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean, like, are they better off, like, in the situation they're in, going on a playoff run, learning from these great veterans ahead of them, as opposed to like being on a team that maybe doesn't make the playoffs, but they're playing every day or every game, playing a lot. So I always kind of found that as an interesting type of question. And then later in the week, I'll have something on, just how important this game is for the Eagles. I mean, if they're to lose this game, I mean, people in Philly obviously would go crazy, and rightly so, because, they're a number 1 seed. They should get to the Super Bowl, or at least, to the NFC Championship game. And, you can't really just pin everything, on saying, oh, well, they're a young team, they'll be back and everything. Well, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, their offensive and defensive coordinators are up for jobs. I mean, there's a good chance probably they'll leave. They have a lot of veterans who are on the last year of their contracts. I think they have like almost 20 free agents, and you can't keep everybody. So, you got to strike while the iron's hot. And that's pretty much what I'll be writing about, later in the week and stuff. And then, of course, obviously the game on Saturday night and all the follow-up and analysis from there. And, you can follow my work at mfrank on Twitter at mfranknfl or delawareonline.com. So I appreciate that.
No, absolutely. And some key storylines in the offseason. Hopefully we're not thinking or talking about that next week. We can put that off for the next 25 days or so, Martin. So, hey, buckle up, safe travels to the link, and look forward to all that great content. Always appreciate the time here on the Football Playbook.
All right. Thanks, Rick, for having me, and take care, everyone.
All right. There you have it. My favorite Martin Frank, good friend of the show, always dropping knowledge. And I did not hear that about Lane Johnson. So, hey, you talk about the benefits of the bye week. Now, he mentioned something there that really piqued my interest with the tank commander, Wink Martindale, and what he can do in this chess matchup against the one Jalen Hurts, who's a triple threat. You heard him say, I'll beat you with my arm, I'll beat you with my legs, and I'll slice you with my mind. Well, I think Wink Martindale, Jalen Hurts, they're going to be playing Jedi mind tricks. I'm going to get into that with our good friend Glenn Irby here right after the break. Eagles Newswire, USA Today. Smash that like button. We're just getting started. Kayla Santiago in hour 2. Hey, baby. Tone DeShields II holding it down.